So what's the point of Windows 11? That's really my big question after testing it out for months now and getting to spend a lot of time with the final build. With Windows 10, Microsoft basically had to make a huge course correction from Windows 8, which, if you'll remember, was really focused on touchscreens and tablet PCs and just things that people weren't really using when that thing launched. And before that, there was Windows 7, which itself was an apology for Windows Vista, which was too bloated and slow and kind of a really dumb follow-up to Windows XP. So there's kind of a story to all of these Windows versions over the last few decades, and Windows 11 just feels different. It's just kind of here. It was announced kind of suddenly, and we didn't really have much time to really prepare for it, and now that I'm playing with it, you know, it just doesn't seem like much has changed. But you know what, maybe that's the point. You know, it is basically a new coat of paint on top of Windows 10. And it also feels like Microsoft is trying to save face from Windows 10X, which was supposed to be the dual screen focused version of Windows 10 that was going to be on the Surface Neo and a bunch of other PCs. That got delayed, and there's a whole history to that, which I'll get to. But I think overall, just after spending so much time with Windows 11, it just seems like Microsoft's attempt at being the most mindful OS, or you know, the most calming and pleasant experience that you can have with Windows. And I wonder if Microsoft is just really leaning heavily on those visual changes. At first glance, it looks like a radical departure, right? The taskbar is in the center. That's crazy. We haven't done that in Windows ever. It looks like a Mac, so why would we do that? The Start menu has been reworked once again, which is, again, something Microsoft doesn't want to touch after what happened with Windows 8. They created a Start page that took up the whole screen, and Windows users kind of hated it. But you know what? I'll take this new Start menu over Live Tiles because nobody ever used those things, and I don't know why they're even in Windows 10. This newer, fresher look extends throughout the operating system. So, you know, Windows have rounded corners, everything looks a little fresher. The new settings section just looks a lot nicer too. It's a lot cleaner and easier to figure out where things are. And, you know, I just really appreciated all that. So it feels a little different from Windows 10. It just feels more pleasant overall, which, again, I think is what Microsoft is going for here. Windows 10 was so focused on being the most productive OS possible. Microsoft really had to work a lot to change things up from Windows 8. And maybe some design elements got left by the wayside. Windows 11 feels like a design-focused upgrade. And don't worry, if you don't like the center taskbar, you can always shove that back to the left and get a more traditional view. But, you know, for my reviews, I just kind of kept it in the center to see what Microsoft is going for here. And I've gotten used to it, but I'll get to what some of those organizational issues are because you can't see window labels anymore, and I do think that could be a problem for some people. Among other new changes, the system tray, that whole area has been reworked. So the system's notification area, which is what pops up when you hit the lower right corner, you know, it looks a lot cleaner when it comes to notifications, the calendar. It's nice to have the calendar right there. The system shortcuts also look a little cleaner overall too. They pop up when you hit the volume button or your Wi-Fi button down there, and that lets you do quick things like change the volume, change the display brightness, turn Wi-Fi on and off. Some of those settings are confusing because when I first started testing out Windows 11, the nightlight button wasn't there, and then all of a sudden it just appeared there too. So there's a lot of things that just seem like they don't quite make sense, and you can't actually get manual control over those buttons either. Windows 11 also marks the return of widgets back to Windows. They were kind of in Windows 7, and I don't think anybody will care. They're tiny little apps. They pop up when you hit the widgets button in the taskbar. They give you a bit of news and the weather and quick search functionality and everything, but I don't see the point in them. That's not how I use my computer anymore, and maybe if they were integrated into the Start menu in a better way, maybe that would be useful, but then that's just Live Tiles all over again. So I don't know. Tell me how you feel about widgets, folks, because I'm not a big fan. There are also some big app changes throughout Windows 11 too. The new Windows Store just looks a lot nicer. It's a little better organized. It has a left-hand menu. It makes it much easier to just figure out what's a new app and what you should install. And when you click into an app listing, it kind of is divided into two separate frames, which always has the install button front and center. So if you're checking out reviews or just want to see a description of an app and just want to go back and install it, you know, it's always going to be right there. I think that's both a usability thing, and also it probably will encourage people to install more apps. I'm sure that's what Microsoft wants. Windows 11 also comes with the latest Xbox app baked in right into the OS. Previously it was something you had to go out and download. it's nice. You can organize all your games, you can access Game Pass games there and stream some titles too over xCloud if you have a, Xbox All Access account. So it's nice overall. It's a good place to have all of your games organized. You can access all your Game Pass titles if you're subscribed to that. It does a lot of things that the older Xbox app didn't. The weird thing about both the Store app and the Xbox app is that they're also going to be coming to Windows 10 eventually, which again makes Windows 11 seem like less of an upgrade and maybe more of just a version number shift. One of the few technologies that's going to be really exclusive to Windows 11 is direct storage, which is basically the technology Microsoft uses on the Xbox to speed up load times with newer NVMe SSDs. For some reason, Windows 10 isn't going to be getting that, maybe as a carrot to encourage people to upgrade. But if you want to have the best PC load times possible, gamers will want to upgrade. I think for everybody else, there are fewer compelling reasons to do so, unless you really want this new aesthetic. You're going to get that Store app and the Xbox app, so a lot of things are going to trickle back down to Windows 10. Running Windows 11 for the first time on a new PC, I was testing on the Surface Laptop Studio. The setup process is really easy and simple and honestly very relaxing. You enter your username, your Microsoft account, you click a few options, you still can choose if you want to open up your information to advertisers and things like that, and then it just kind of goes. It does most of the work and it's done within 5 to 10 minutes. You'll be looking at the new desktop. That's a really nice experience for a new PC. I think it's going to be a little more controversial once people start realizing the differences between Windows 11 Home and Pro when Microsoft announced Windows 11. They also mentioned just kind of casually that an internet connection and a Microsoft account is required to set up Windows 11 Home. So that is kind of a major restriction. Windows has never had that before. Windows 11 Pro doesn't have that requirement. So basically it means Windows 11 Home users can't set up a local account to start using their computer if they don't have internet and they have to use a Microsoft account. For Windows 11 Pro, that's more for IT users and pro users who may want to be setting up different sorts of systems or entire fleets of systems, so that requirement isn't there. Personally, I just find that really annoying because it kind of goes against the whole Windows mantra and Microsoft's new mantra being very accessible and reaching the most users possible. Not everybody has fast internet access or internet access at all, certainly in America and definitely worldwide. There are billions of people without good internet access and they're just not going to be able to use Windows 11, or they're going to have to find workarounds or go to a friend's house or something to set it up. And yeah, they'll also be required to use a Microsoft account to set up for the first time. We talked with Microsoft about this and they confirmed that you don't have to be online all the time and you can use local accounts once you set up that PC for the first time. But it just seems like a whole process that is getting in the way of this supposedly pleasant and peaceful Windows 11 experience. And I expect a lot of people are going to be upgrading their systems instead of getting entirely new PCs, and that's also where a little more confusion is going to come in. Microsoft has set up some really restrictive requirements for Windows 11, basically at least 8th generation Intel CPUs, chips around 4 or 5 years old, or equivalent AMD chips. You're going to need to have a TPM 2.0 module, and you'll need to have Secure Boot enabled on your system. These are all things that are meant to make Windows, more secure. It's in the name, and it's a way to fight against malware and bad software in general, like things that could make Windows very vulnerable. They're really trying to lock down Windows 11, but that upgrade experience for some people, especially if you have a computer that's kind of on the border between unsupported and supported stuff, that could be really annoying for a lot of people. I set up some computers like the Surface Laptop 4, which came out this year. It worked like a charm. It worked through Windows updates, didn't have any issues, kind of just ran on autopilot. But when it came to my desktop, which I put together myself, and it has an AMD Ryzen 5800X and an ASRock motherboard, I had to manually go in, enable Secure Boot, turn on the TPM, and then I learned that my Windows install had it was on an MBR formatted disk rather than GPT, and that's where things just get complicated. I had to do a bunch of command line work to convert my disk for it to actually work in the Secure Boot install. That's all something that I don't think people will actually want to deal with, and certainly not mainstream users, but I think more experienced Windows users are going to have some complications like that, especially if you have a custom-built PC. I think after some of the uproar around these upgrade restrictions, Microsoft revealed that, hey, you're going to be able to download an ISO or installation media and just do a manual install, which will avoid some of those chip limitations, but it makes for a more complicated installation, and it's not something everybody's going to use. And according to The Verge, what Microsoft is saying is that it seems like they may limit certain security updates on those manual installations. So I don't know what's going to happen. It seems like even Microsoft is still trying to figure out how restrictive it wants to be with Windows 11. So after all of that, how is Windows 11 just as an operating system? Honestly, it's nice. It's easy to use, it's pleasant. I really like the new interface. I think it's just feels like a more calming OS, which is something Microsoft has honestly been going for since those really ugly Windows XP colors. They went with green and blue on those because apparently people thought that would be a really calming thing for PC users. I just found it really ugly back then. The complications with Windows 11 are more about learning how to use the new taskbar. It is icon focused now. You can't enable window labels anymore, so I always did that to see what was exactly in a window before I opened it. Now you kind of have to click into the icon or hover above it, look for the specific window, and then click. Or you could use Alt-Tab or Windows Tab to kind of juggle between all your apps. It's just not as seamless as I'm used to for Windows. It's a lot like Mac OS actually, and you know, I even have trouble navigating Windows there. I typically use Mission Control and Apple's Expose feature to blow up all the windows and let me choose specific ones. I guess I'll just have to get used to Windows Tab on Windows 11. I don't know, it seems like Microsoft wants to make everything look more seamless and less cluttered, but I'm used to clutter. I kind of work better in clutter, so I wonder if a lot of people are going to agree with me or with what Microsoft is doing. So let's get back to my original question. Who needs Windows 11? I think, like Thanos, Windows 11 is inevitable. It is one of those updates you're going to get eventually. Microsoft has just started rolling it out, but I don't think many people will need to rush out and get it. Those game features like direct storage, they're also adding auto HDR eventually, which is also on Xbox. Those aren't around yet, so you can wait a couple months and wait for all of your accessories and apps to be fully compatible with it. I've had some issues just upgrading too. Wireless drivers and stuff just like started acting very odd. So again, you don't need to rush out, and the visual changes are nice, but I don't think that alone justifies an entire new Windows version. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. You know, Microsoft is trying to be more pleasant and mindful with this. You know, it wants it to be a relaxing experience, except the upgrades are so complicated, the requirements are so complicated, and I think for a lot of people, moving an existing computer from Windows 10 to 11 is going to be kind of a headache, but I guess we'll see. It's also hard for me to just accept Windows 11 as an entirely new version because a couple of years ago, this was just going to be Windows 10X. You know, and last year, Microsoft announced that 10X would focus on single screen devices instead of dual screen devices because it turns out even the Surface Neo wasn't making it on time. I think because of the pandemic, a lot of PC makers that want to make dual screen devices just couldn't really do it. They basically have transformed Windows 10X into this thing, and earlier this year, they announced that Windows 10X was going to be canceled entirely, and some of that work would go into normal Windows. And just a couple weeks after that, they announced Windows 11. And a part of me wonders, does Microsoft just want people to buy new PCs? This is kind of a good time for that because a lot of people are working from home, a lot of people are still doing schoolwork from home, and you know, a new PC seems tempting. Our lives are kind of revolving around these things right now. And here's my big takeaway. A whole new version of Windows is certainly going to get more attention, more media focus, and more headlines than a mere Windows 10 update. And I think that's exactly what Microsoft wanted. Stay tuned to Engadget.com for more of our Windows 11 coverage, and we'll be reviewing PCs that are running this too. So if you dug this video, be sure to like and subscribe.